Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of, I almost said Gearbox, Camera and Flask here at the C47. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Whole bunch of people already in the chat. Hugo, Oli, Bad, Beast Barbecue, Accurate Addict, Wannabe, Part-Time, of course. There's our part-time. We love it.
Yep.
And,
got the regulars
and others.
and some new people. And we got some new people coming in, which I'm loving. It's awesome.
Love it, love it, love it. Love seeing those. So here's the scoop. This show happens every single week, Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Eastern time. We'd love it if you join us. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell notification. And we also really love chatting with you guys throughout the whole show. So as we jump into our topic here, please let us know your thoughts, questions, concerns, and more. So the other gentleman here with us is the wonderful Ben Barden.
Hello.
How you doing, boss?
Whoa.
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good.
Hello.
And benbarden.co.uk.
Yeah, that's it. Well done. Thank you.
Excellent. Is where people can head over to watch and see his wonderful work. Photographer, filmmaker in multiple countries, right?
Yeah. UK today on a very bad connection, so I apologize. I'm very blurry.
You're out there doing the good work.
Yeah.
And then we have the man himself, the man, the myth, the legend.
Oh, come on, Golden Child.
Jem Schofield,
Okay.
who we have the pleasure of being on his channel today.
The Obi-Wan, the old guy. That's who I
the
am.
most skills. I love it.
Not true, but okay, cool. Awesome. Here we are for another episode. Is this episode 6 or 7? I can't even remember.
I think it's 7.
Let me see.
Looking at the title here.
Oh, no,
I'm sorry, 6.
It's because we skipped 1 week for Halloween, so that people could get drunk and dress up and do all of the debauchery that they're, we don't even want to know about that. So that's a whole thing we don't want to know about. Good. Wow. Okay. We're starting to get questions too. So this is great. So the one thing that we should state right now, the title of this live stream is Camera and Flask. It actually has a tagline too, which is, which we don't get to put up. I should probably put that up at some point, which is, I think it's distilled ideas on photography, filmmaking, video production, and probably, alcohol as well, because it's Camera and Flask. So I think we need some drinks. As always, our fine friend, the Golden Child in Illinois. Hey, you calling me stuff.
Oh, gosh.
Caleb is amazing, by the way, and I do mean that genuinely. It's not disingenuous. He just got done with his Wednesday live stream, and he jumps on and does Camera and Flask every week. So he ran upstairs and grabbed something to drink while he ran upstairs. I don't even know if this guy had enough time to go to the bathroom, but I hope he did, because we usually talk for about an hour. So Caleb Pike, can you tell us what drink you are imbibing? You say imbibing? I don't know. You can't. Yeah, imbibing.
Yeah, that
Works for me. Yeah. Works for me. So you just put me up on that pedestal, and I'm just gonna tip it over, and because of speed and lack of searching through the cabinet for something I haven't talked about already, we're back to 4 Roses.
Second appearance.
Just failing you left and right. Everyone's got these interesting drinks, and I'm just like right back. I searched.
You're gonna bring Jello shots out or something like that.
Oh my gosh, no. So we're back to bourbon, and yeah. Not much is changing. Someday I'm going to surprise you guys. I'm going to come in here with something that's just going to knock your socks off. But this week we're not doing that.
Caleb. Last week we were all a little tired. There's a good energy happening this week. I feel it. Yeah. And somebody made a comment here. Matt said that your live stream today was epic.
That's what happens when you have Cassie's.
Yes.
My wife who joined me.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. That's why I'm late. Is we were having a ball, hanging out with everybody over there, and then time
should come on to Camera and Flask at some point. We got to keep getting some more guests. Okay, good. Okay, cool. That's good.
Love
so
it.
4 Roses, you have it poured. We now move over to Mum's house in the Lake District of England. That's where you are again. We're starting to get used to this background sometimes.
I know that I've actually been here more than I've been at home when we've been doing these.
I think you've done at least 3 episodes from here, but that's because you've been traveling and working constantly. You're not having a visit. It just happens to be a home base because you're not in the Czech Republic, correct?
Right. I haven't been home for 2 weeks. So yeah, I had a mad week last week. This week, today, I've literally this evening, it's 11 p.m. here. I was working on an oil rig until 6 p.m. this evening, and then helicoptered off the oil rig back to shore, got in the car, drove up here, got here, managed to find enough stuff to put together at least something to record this. So I'm kind of a little tired tonight. But
you're kind of like a cross between James Bond and MacGyver. It's amazing. It's ridiculous. All right,
I feel like neither of those people, but I am drinking. This is something that you can't buy anywhere, I don't think. This is a commemorative whiskey that is from Tobermory, but it's for the rugby club in the town where I'm from, and they had a new stadium built, and this was to commemorate it. But it's a Tobermory of some description. So,
what region do you know? It's just their own little thing. Okay, good. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm excited. All right. So I am currently on the road as well. I am in Burbank, California, in the studio space classroom. My drink today is Tomatin. Am I saying that right, Ben? I think so.
I don't know.
I've had it in Scotland as well. It's a Highland whiskey or Scotch. And this particular one, I can't actually get up in Oregon. I have to go to Bevmo. So any of you people who are here on the live stream who are from California, go to your Bevmo. It is a 12-year. It's a double cask. So it's bourbon and then sherry. And nice. You're getting fewer and fewer scotches that actually have years on them because they're running out. Because especially in Asia, they're just buying up all the scotch. So you'll see these things like Founder's Reserve and like Pompous Ass and all these other things that they're in terms of scotches. And that's just because they're mixing all the years together and they don't actually put a year. But the reason I get this is because it's quite nice. It's not exceptional, but it's not horrific. It's a nice scotch, and it costs about $38 or $39 a bottle, which is quite reasonable over here for a decent bottle of scotch. And here...
That's quite reasonable for here.
Like The Godfather. You know the scene, everybody. Okay.
Beautiful.
And they have, at the location I am right now, they have these petite little plastic glasses that look actually quite good for having a little scotch. So we are now all poured, gentlemen. Shall we do a cheers and let's get into today's episode? So this is a cheers to you guys and to our growing audience on camera and Flask. I hope everybody else has a drink in their hands, does not have to have alcohol in it. And let's just go ahead and have a little drink and get this thing started.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. Ah, good.
I saw we had some coffee drinkers in the house.
Yes, that's good.
Love it. Love it.
Put some of this in your coffee.
There you go.
Okay. There we go. Any drinks are fair game, even water. Good. I got a Burbank Rocks. Mr. Caleb Pike, tell us what this crazy idea of
a title
live stream. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be. Yeah, this is part one of many. I think.
Yeah, this one's going to be nuts. We are talking about the future of filmmaking tech. We've talked a little off camera about it, and we're gonna save all that stuff for today. Multi-part series. We don't know when part 2 is coming, but we're gonna do a multi-part series. So we're thinking not like next year, the year after, but what's way out? What's the next thing? Right now we're in the middle of RGB. LED is everywhere. 8K is on the horizon. So that's our topic today. I don't know if we want to start in categories and save other categories for future episodes, or if we just want to just do our thing and make it happen.
I don't think I've done enough prep for us to go into categories. I think we just
just wing it.
Done it. Yeah, absolutely wing it.
Got it. So, do we want to start with cameras? Is that fair?
Yeah.
What do you think the next big thing is, Jem? What's something that's just way out there?
That's a good question. So Wannabe Films, by the way, Macallan 15 Fine Oak. Try that. That's a little something for you. So Matt actually made a comment right now, which could be a good starting point. Future is basically Ready Player One, right? Question mark. So I think that for me, when we start to talk about future of content creation, that we have to think completely outside of categories, and we have to think about the environments that we live in and the spaces that we're in. So you say 2050, this is going on to 2019, and we think about how much cameras have evolved in the last 30 years. And I think there's going to be cameras everywhere is the first thing. And I think they're going to be built into virtually any appliance that exists 30 years from now. So that in itself is going to change the way we think about everything, the way we interact with everything. And if our refrigerator has a camera inside of it, and we want to start a conversation with somebody in the kitchen, and then we move into our living room and our TV has a camera. I mean, we have webcams in our laptops and everything else already. And then we move into the bedroom and then there's another device or it's built into the room. I think that we have to be prepared for the fact that cameras exist everywhere, and that we have to separate those two things from cameras are everywhere and we are communicating with people all of the time from everywhere, to how does that fit with us in terms of storytellers and as content creators? Because do we have to think about a new way to tell stories because we are seeing everybody all of the time? I mean, from an educational standpoint, if a camera's everywhere and I want to teach somebody something and everybody has access to cameras everywhere, I can just walk into any room and say, I'm going to show you a lighting setup. I don't have to set up any cameras anymore. I mean, it's just cameras everywhere. And we know that if this little smartphone right now has a couple of lenses in it, and there's already Lytros and stuff like that, that 30 years from now, whatever this device is that lets us communicate with people will give us the ability to have selective focus. It'll work at the equivalent of 20, plus thousand ISO, and it'll have clean images, and it will fit inside of our pocket 1,000,000%, 100%, whatever you want to say. There's no way that that's not going to happen 30 years from now. So I think for me, the conversation might be, how are we going to tell stories 30 years from now, 30 plus years from now, when cameras are ubiquitous to every part of our lives? Microphones are part of our entire lives. And unless we move up into the middle of nowhere, I don't think you're going to be able to get away from it very easily. Any thoughts on that? I don't know. That's just what's coming to my mind. I didn't even think about that prior to.
We're so close to being there. That's not 30 years away. That's like 10.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is 30 years from now, that is just the world we live in. So maybe I'm even looking to, I'm not even looking far enough ahead in terms of where technology would be. Ken. God damn it. Too many people with this name. Ben. Ben,
yes,
do you
Jeff.
have any ideas on where we might be with camera technology in 2050?
It's so hard to predict, isn't it? I guess that there's all the evolution in the way that cameras have evolved over the last 10 years. And the improvements that we make, and so the autofocus, low light capability, all that kind of stuff. But I think what you were talking about, that kind of, when you talk about selective focus stuff for after, it's things like that, the Lytro camera and the way that works is kind of interesting and seems, and when that first appeared, that seemed massively futuristic, and that it's just capturing this sort of light field, everything is capturing everything in a space, and then you can go and make your images after, and you can put the focus where you want, you can reframe the whole thing. That's the kind of thing that I would imagine where it's going. How we use it and how we use it for storytelling is, and it's the same with this mass web of cameras that are ever increasing now that you were talking about. That's something different to us using a frame to tell a story, or that using those things in a deliberate way rather than it just being here is everything. And I don't know how that fits. And it's a little like the VR stuff, that technology is kind of really interesting, but no one knows what to do with it from an entertainment point of view.
Yeah.
You know, it's still gimmicky, and I think that's more interesting to me as to how we use this stuff than actually exactly how it'll manifest itself, if that makes any kind of sense.
Yeah, no, I think it does. I mean, Caleb, what are your thoughts in terms of, the actual capturing of images, 30 plus years from now?
Yeah. That's interesting. I didn't even think about VR. Just because I feel like I wonder if that's like not going to replace us, but it's going to be more of an interactive entertainment, not you're watching a movie with a VR headset.
Mm-hmm.
But, who knows? It could be a combination of the two. We were talking the other day, and if we're looking way out, like 30 years, like it's crazy to think going backward 30 years. So it's what, 88. Ever since 2000, I'm wrecked. Yeah, 88.
Yeah.
1988 versus today. And then from here, jumping forward to 2050, it's going to be way more accelerated because of that curve of innovation is insane right now.
Yep.
So we were talking, I wonder if we're going to have a box for a camera. It'll be significantly smaller, maybe the size of a phone, but way smaller than the cameras, or can be smaller than the cameras we have today. And there's no lens. There's just this hole. And it's like, what is that camera? I can never remember. Yeah, is that the one where you like post focus?
Yeah,
correct.
Yeah. It's like that mixed with like a previs. Do you watch cinematography database at all on YouTube? So right now he's like switched from doing lighting to like only like essentially video games that show pre-visual.
Yeah, this is Matt Workman.
Previs. Yeah, Matt Workman. Yep. Cool dude. I wonder if we're gonna have essentially a camera, and it's almost like Instagram filters. You choose a lens, and it uses various algorithms to perfectly replicate or very closely replicate the characteristics of that lens. Maybe you can mix and match. You can get the flares from this. Oh, I'll turn anamorphic on. Depth of field is all generated automatically. So it's still in the real world, but it can take the information from this crazy futuristic sensor and apply very specific looks, and you can mix and match all of that.
Yeah. So let me throw this out there. 2050. Generationally, I'm an old fart by that point in time. I mean, I am at that point, but there are some amazing people, who have innovated in our industry, who are now in their 60s, 70s, early 80s. I mean, they still understand what all of this stuff is, and they understand, and they developed a lot of these things. If I'm crystal balling 30 plus years from now, the thing that I'm thinking about as a content creator is, how is audience ingesting and experiencing content creation? Because that's ultimately what we all are. We are content creators. It doesn't matter what our platform is, or to a certain degree who we are creating it for. Our jobs, which are some of the greatest jobs in the world, even with the ups and downs that we talked about last week, are to create experiences. Sometimes it's to tell a story. Sometimes it's to communicate something so that somebody wants to buy something, but ultimately, I have to think about, okay, so 30 years from now, somebody who's in that 20 to 40-year-old demographic, who goes out, who experiences things, what is it that's going to be the experience that they're going to have 30 plus years from now? And then put ourselves in the shoes of the people who have to create those experiences. Because ultimately, just because you have cameras everywhere in every room and you have microphones and everything else, that in itself doesn't create an experience. It might create social interaction between people, but then there's always going to be a hunger for something that's beyond what they experience every single day. Correct? I mean, like everybody gets bored with it. It doesn't matter how stimulating it is or overstimulating it is. They're going to want something that stimulates them more than what they're getting in regular life. We can still go to a movie theater and with a well-crafted film that is written well, well acted, whether it's CGI based or not, we can be taken to a place that we've never been taken to. Right. 30 years from now, I mean, you know, everything's going to be freaking Avatar. So you're going to go see it and it's going to be like, I saw 100 avatars already. So what can you give me that's, you know, AI based, that's AR based, you know, that's VR based, that's going to give me an experience that I can't get anywhere else. And that could be where we fit in to a certain degree as content creators. And we may be even using the same tools that are used in the actual world. But I think that that's what we kind of have to talk about, because that's who we are as content creators. So we can crystal ball what the tools are going to be, but ultimately, what kind of content are we creating? And that's what I'm interested in thinking about for the future. Yeah. So
did you either of you see the I can't remember whether it was it CSI? They did an episode with the what was it called? The Nokia VR camera.
Yeah. The I know which one, the round one. Yeah, the Osmo, I think. Yeah.
So they shot this thing and then we watched this episode. I don't know if either of you saw this.
I didn't.
But then you're looking at it and you put the thing on, and then there's stuff going on all around you, but you think it's so uninteresting because you're wanting to be guided through. You want the director to hold your hand and the cinematographer and take you through that story. And I'm not interested in what's going on here. It's this, and that's exactly what you were just saying. That it's great, all this stuff. But how do we harness it or use it? And some of that technology, I'm not sure there's application. VR stuff has amazing application, but I'm just not sure that storytelling is.
Yeah, I mean, Go ahead. Sorry, Caleb.
I was just, when you were talking about that, it made me think of Call of Duty, the games, and the very end sequences of them. I don't know if you've ever played any of the, I don't know, the last 7 years worth of games. They all have this insanely dramatic ending. You know, like you're on the beach with the bad guy, you both got blown off a ship and you're trying to get to your pistol, you're clawing to your pistol or whatever. Those are like very guided kind of VR vibe scenes. So you have some control, but there's a lot of direction. In a lot of the games that Activision, I believe, is who runs all that, are kind of like that. So I wonder if we'll see something like that, where it's still there's still a cinematographer, like legitimately developing these scenes. But there's a little bit of interaction going on. So you're pulling the blanket away to reveal the horse's head in Godfather. But you know, it's gonna happen. It's just you don't have any choice but to. But you're still a part of the story. Yeah,
well, do you remember though? Did you have those books when you were a kid? They were called Choose Your Own Adventure.
Oh yeah, yep.
Right. So I haven't read the story, but I saw a headline about the next series of Black Mirror having alternate endings, which you can have influence over when you're watching that. So I haven't seen it, and I haven't seen any detail as to how it's going to work and the mechanics of it. But that's kind of interesting. Not a new idea, but
yeah, I mean, we had it in video games with Laserdisc to a certain degree, you know, with Dragon Slayer and Space Ace and all that kind of stuff, all the Don Bluth stuff. But you know, I think what's interesting is that a lot of it is not necessarily generational. And we talk about our kids. Let's just, you know, I'm just going to bring that up. So my son is 10 years old. He has access devices. He has a tablet, but he doesn't have a phone yet. So he doesn't have a constant wherewithal to text people and to do the things that my two teenage girls can do. So it's interesting because when he watches television and he watches movies, he watches television and he watches movies, and he's not distracted because he doesn't have a device that gives him a distraction. But one for one now, it's almost impossible for us to sit down as a family and watch a movie, and for my 14 and 18-year-old to not actually take out their phone. And as a viewer, it's really distracting to me because they're looking at their phone and they're doing other things and they're not in that story. As soon as my son is 13 years old and he gets a phone, guaranteed the same crap's going to happen. So it's generational because of the technology being there, but part of it is them or people having access to things that can distract them from what we were used to in terms of what our entertainment was. We didn't have those distractions. We had other distractions, you know, and I could go to a pizza parlor and I could have $10 roll of quarters and I could sit there for 5 hours playing video games. And then, you know, my parents were like, who could do that? But it was an easy way to get me out of the house when they wanted to hang out with their friends. You know, roll of quarters and like $5 for pizza and soda. And, you know, I was gone for like a day, basically. But I think that, you know, I think that we have to understand that the people, you know, say millennials and then the generation that's going to come after that, they won't think about being entertained in any way that we do. I don't think. I think that, you know, what stimulates in their interactions in the world will be so different from when I was growing up in my 20s and I would go to clubs and I would hang out at, you know, pubs or bars and things like that. That's just not the thing.
It's changed. That generation don't drink.
Nope. Which is fine. I don't
No, there's nothing wrong with it, but it's such a massive change.
It'll let the scotch catch up.
Yeah. But, you know, there's going to be a lot of goth conventions and Comic-Cons and stuff like that. And again, I don't have a problem with that. I think that, you know, that's another form of entertainment. If it doesn't get creepy, then I think it's totally fine. But I think that we have to think about that as content creators. And we have to realize that as we move forward in a traditional business sense, we're still going to be creating. I don't think that's going to go away because a business has to communicate to a broad audience and they want to sell a product and or service. How we create and deliver that might be different in terms of the medium. You know, we've seen it in movies where people are walking through a space and it's just like the Facebook ads that we get now, or like B&H is tracking me and everything else. You'll walk through a space and something will come up and say, "Hi, Jem, you know, are you still thinking about buying that next camera or light that you were looking at this morning?" Or you'll just see, or they won't say it. They'll just bring up the ad of the thing that you were looking at before.
See, that's interesting. Do you think that we're going to get to a point where at some generation, and it may be as our kids' generation, reject that? There's got to be a point at which you go, I'm sick of being sold to everywhere. And this is not a healthy this is not a healthy thing. Do you think that there's a point at which we go, we need to take a step back from this rather than just acceleration with this and our data being used commercially?
Yes, but I think that
the board.
I think that the solution will just be to become numb about it, because I don't think companies are going to stop doing it. They're already doing it in a soft sell way, right? It's a really actually passive aggressive way to reach an audience. It's really annoying, because you are looking at some things online and then, you know, 3 days later, all of a sudden these banner ads pop up with all of those things that you were looking at. It is kind of passive aggressive. Right. And you know, because it's sort of like, oh, we're not going to call you or put an obnoxious ad in front of you, but just subtly, we're going to like show you all that shit that you were looking at.
But that's almost worse.
Oh, I think it is.
This is. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. What do you think, Caleb? I mean, I know we're kind of moving into the advertising side of it, but I think that that's the most realistic conversation that we can have is we're creating content for people who want to sell a product and or service. So what's that going to look like in the future?
Yeah. I wonder if, well, the good news is when you start to be like, oh, geez, it's just going to be VR and ads, cameras everywhere. And that scene in that Tom Cruise movie.
Minority Report?
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's the good news is, if you look back to, I don't know, 80s, all those movies they did about, or ads, you can look these up on YouTube where they made up, like, this is what the year 1999 will look like, you know, and how far off they were. The good news is, who knows, maybe like the whole ad thing, the whole Facebook thing is just going to be like gluten. you know. It's just kind of like everyone's going to go organic. Or like back in the day, they thought like every home had this like bridge, like a ship bridge with all these controls, and the reality is it's just a smartphone. So that's nice to think about, but yeah, hopefully it's not where we all just learn how to code up, you know, ads when Tom Cruise walks through the door.
No, I hope not. I mean, I don't think there's ever going to be less screens. We've talked about that.
Yeah,
and I think that, you know, being a content creator is still not a bad place to be. We have some. Yeah, go. Were you going to go into comments?
Yes, if that's okay, because we got some really rich stuff in here.
Yeah.
Smart time or part-time films. Smell-o-vision. Seriously, someone made a comment about Saving Private Ryan. The storming of the beach scene had everything but the smell. Very interesting. CGI actors, more realistic and affordable. True and disturbing. Sonos-like cameras, like a mesh network of cameras at home from Fernie Pad. Cameras everywhere. Snapchat filters and enhancements making their way into cameras from Roomrock. And the progress of small mirrorless cameras as large cameras going to be a thing of the past. So shrinking, things shrinking. Maybe getting larger sensors, like the next comment from Harrison, large format sensors, being able to mimic the resolution on a human eye will change the way we see content. Red's new VR camera is a good example of this. Interesting. Smell-o-vision, Snapchat filters. There's and then tons more. You guys are drumming up some awesome stuff.
Yeah, really good stuff.
One of the most interesting technology things is have you both watched Black Mirror? Like all those
No, I haven't.
No. So you and everyone else that's watching, you need to go watch those. They're on Netflix now, I think all of them. So this is Charlie Brooker, who's an English writer who's amazing, and he wrote this series of incredibly dark, disturbing stories that are set in the very near future, and most of them are to do with our ever increasing relationship and reliance on technology, and how that is going to bite us. So there's one that everyone has every element of their life rated.
Well, so they're doing that in China now. You know that's starting to happen. Yep.
So all of these things that he's predicting, some of this stuff from the first season's already coming true, including if you watch go back, and I'm not going to go into it because it's disgusting, but if you go and watch the first episode, and he talks about something that the Prime Minister of Britain does with a pig, and it actually transpires that David Cameron, former Prime Minister, allegedly did this exact same thing and had no. The guys. He sees the future. He sees the future.
Science fiction writers have done that for a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
But things like this kind of these contact lenses and having cameras within contact lenses, and that every moment of your day being recorded and being able to be played back. And this kind of thing that I think is so feasible and so close and really scary.
Yeah, so I mean, in a bigger picture here, I think that it's pretty obvious that 30 years from now, we won't be having conversations about resolution and dynamic range and stuff like that, because there's only so far that the technology has to reach to be as good as what we're capable of seeing, right? If we take a look at color gamut, it's, Rec 2020 color gamut, it's about 76% of what we can see as human beings. And we already are capable of making up information having to do with missing color information when we're only looking at like 35 or 36% of that information. And we can see about 21 stops of dynamic range. We're already getting to camera systems that are 16 plus stops of dynamic range. So I don't think we're really going to have an issue with whether or not we're resolving an image that can mimic what we can see with our human eye. And we also know that camera systems have already gotten to the point where they can shoot at ISOs where they can see in dark interiors better than the human eye can already. And so we're saying 30 years from now, forget about it. So I'm not questioning or even discussing how good camera technology is, because I kind of expect it to be as good, if not better, than what human beings are capable of seeing. And the displays will be good enough to show us that. And we'll probably be 30 years from now able to walk into a warehouse where imagery is being mapped to basically surfaces in a way that the resolution is so high that we can't discern things from the actual object itself. So we could pick up, something that is the shape of a vase, a vase,
Thanks.
and it will basically be whatever you want that to be. It could be made out of marble. It could be made out of, glass. It could be made out of whatever thing. And we will, because of also haptic technology, which is, giving feedback, be able to feel what that would be. So if it's made of something that is marble, then when we pick it up, it will feel colder than the other objects in the room that are of other materials. And if it's made of glass, it'll have a feeling of that. So I think that there's all of those things coming together to give experiences that mimic actual real objects, but we're just using technology because it's so inexpensive 30 years from now that, we already know that the Harry Potter newspaper, it exists already, right? So it's not even a matter of whether or not we can have battery technology in a newspaper. It's more about the fact that technology is so ubiquitous that, I can pick up this bottle of scotch and it can have an ad that's playing here for a feature film. I can watch a trailer on a bottle of scotch. I mean, that sounds ridiculous, but 30 years from now, that's going to be easy technology. So, you could be drinking a drink and an advertisement could come up in the bottom of your drink, or it would say, do you want another drink? Because it realizes that you only have that much left of the drink, and you basically just nod and it brings you another drink. Why can't that happen? That can happen. Yeah, the holodeck's definitely happening in part-time films. What?
It's basically a waiter.
Yeah, but they already have this stuff. I mean, they already have technology where you walk into a bar and there's a table, and instead of playing a video game on the table, you basically just move it around like Minority Report, and you decide what your meal's going to be and you order it. But why can't that happen in your glass when you ordered, a scotch and you're almost done with your scotch, and it just says, do you want another one? And then it shows up.
I'm upset thinking about the future of like literally every surface is those stupid gas station ads while you're pumping gas and there's no mute button or the mute button doesn't work.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
By the way, Rimrock Creative Media has the best, comment so far today. He says, drink enough scotch and you'll see a movie trailer on that bottle right now.
Oh my gosh.
It's amazing. So good. Oh my God. Okay. Yeah, the holodeck from Star Trek is coming. There can only be 1 or 2 fortnights though at a time. So I think we also need to acknowledge that from an audience standpoint, there's the next big explosion of something. So we're talking about the reality of, everything else that's being done. Yeah. What does this mean? Music played by mistake on my PC when that English guy was talking about the future.
I did that subliminally. That was me.
Thank you very much.
Someone talked about, do you think filmmakers will be using 35 millimeter film? When do you think the day will come when 35 millimeter film is mini DV?
People kick back against the rise of all the digi stuff, and I think it will increase in popularity as an anti-technology thing. I think the more digi, the more hyper realistic everything gets.
Sure. Because I'm not really that tied into Hollywood, but I mean, it's still a big deal, right?
Well, and the film manufacturers are starting to reintroduce film stocks that they haven't been producing for a long time.
Right.
So there's a big resurgence in it. People are still making scanners and making new scanners.
If Kodak had another several $1 million just to wait it out, right? Because they're done, aren't they? Or do they get purchased by somebody? Or are they back? I can't remember. I feel like every other year is like Kodak.
They exist as a company, and they keep teasing this, Super 8 camera that's supposed to be
I've seen that weird looking.
And of course we had the digital Bolex, which was a great project, which is sort of that bridging the gap between.
Rest in peace.
Oh yeah. But fortunately those guys are still working. I just ran into Elle on a subway train, I just walked onto a subway, and Elle was sitting there, she just got on, and I was like, and then we had a whole chat. So that's crazy when you run into people in a place like that.
That's a genius comment from Rimrock. Kodak will introduce a film that has the Alexa look.
That's brilliant. Yeah. So, you know, I think, I don't know, Ben. I mean, I think that we are going to plod along for the next 20 or 30 years. And there will be, you know, the vinyl of our industry, which will be film. And, you know, they'll come out with some kits that we can set up in our kitchens, and we can develop our own stuff and do some things. You know, that'll be fun. Somebody will come up with something and they'll say, hey, look, you know, if you want to shoot film with XYZ camera, we're going to come up with the equivalent of what a still photographer would have in, you know, and set up a darkroom. But they'll make the process a little bit more streamlined. And so
I never even thought of that, but that's brilliant. Like, being able to, like, in your kitchen process 35 millimeter film when 47K is a thing, you know, or the third generation of HDR displays or whatever, like being able to like take something that was back in the day, like top of the line, very difficult to do. And just like, yeah, you just kind of, you know, put it in a box, press a red button, and it comes out the other side as a whatever.
No, I mean, I don't see why they couldn't develop that. Why couldn't they develop, a system where you basically order for $1,000 this rectangular box, and you feed it your film, and what it does is it processes your film. You put into there how you want to develop the film. Are you going to push or pull the film? You know, and is it going to have any process that's going to be applied to it? But before it does that, or somehow very cleverly, it creates the equivalent of a digital master for you as well, so that you basically get a digital file and you also get your processed film. And, you know, and what, I mean, sure, somebody could build something like that. I don't know.
Or you just, put it in like a funky toaster looking thing, and then it shows up in Final Cut, but it's like you have red raw dials or whatever that you can use on a touchscreen.
I mean, that's how the film. Isn't that how the film industry evolved? Was basically you did film to digital transfers.
Yeah, and it sounds a little absurd now, but I mean, I'm sure if you went back in time with one of these modern vinyl players, the fact that you can like play a vinyl, but it like Bluetooth sends a Bluetooth, you know, to Bluetooth speaker or whatever. All these crazy, like, it's crazy.
We got to get Larry some C41. I think that, I think that here's the other thing, that the concept of bespoke is going to expand considerably as time goes on, because the ability to create products for people that are very small percentages of people, that's exactly what they want, is becoming more and more real as time goes on, because we can quickly develop. I mean, we know that 3D printers exist, but in China, you know, in Shenzhen, you can go there and you can go into a market and you can say, oh, I'd like the screen to be just a little bit bigger, and I'd like this to be here, and I'd like this. And they can build you that, and they can build it for you fast. And so the ability to have products that are in technology-based categories that are bespoke will also be pretty interesting. So we may all have very unique phones, and my phone may be completely different than your phone, and they're not manufacturing 5 million of them anymore. They're saying, what phone do you want? And you plug in your stuff, and then Apple or Google or Samsung sends you your variation of your phone. And that might be 15 or 20 years from now, but at a certain point, the technology even in that will get so advanced that in order to continue to sell product to a consumer, you're going to have to make it personalized. And so, and then what is it that we do? We're content creators, so we're going to have to create more personalized content for that person or for those people in specific product categories. So a company may make, let's say, something that that plays music, and they'll say, you know, we need to create advertisements for a very small segment of our market, but we also need to do it for all of the other small segments of our market, because everything is basically being built for people very specifically to their tastes and their needs. Do you think that that's possible 30 years from now? Either of you guys?
Sure. Even shorter time frame, I think it's It's interesting. And you think about the way you buy, if you buy not a Mac necessarily, but you buy a PC, that's how you build it. You go, I want that, and you send it off to the company, and then they build it for you when it comes a week later. So
I think eventually it's gonna. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I
No,
have a delay on my end.
No, you're up.
Yeah, it's a weird delay. So I wonder if like Louis C.K., comedian, he talked about cell phones on a talk show host. On a talk show host. So yes. it's a little more G or PG.
Yeah.
And he talked about how like he thinks the future of phones is literally like a thin piece of flexible, like disposable, if we can have information transfer to various objects, a small disposable little whatever, you have like 50 of them in your house or whatever. It's like pulling a Kleenex out of a Kleenex box. Wouldn't it be sad though if we all reach our 70s, 80s and or 80s, 90s and kids are just like, oh dude, I found this old 5D Mark II. I'm gonna like they're all shooting on these old digital cameras for the look. The rolling shutter is just so good on that camera. Oh,
love it.
It's so bad.
I had one of those moments.
I'm just amazed that you brought Louis C.K. up, and
then you talked about Kleenex.
And then you talked about Kleenex. How did you pull that one off, Caleb? Unbelievable. Okay, that's the end of that conversation. That was amazing. I loved it. No, I think that's true. I mean, people do go back to cameras now, right? They go back to mini DV cameras and things like that, and they just shoot with them. They say, screw actually trying to create that look in post. We'll just shoot with the camera, and we'll blow it
like
up.
VHS is that right now, right? Like
totally.
VHS is like, nostalgic. And maybe just as time goes on, eventually it'll be mini DV and then these stupid DSLRs again.
Yeah. So Part-Time Film says, I watched the making of, I know about this story, but I watched the making of Jaws, and Spielberg said that because the shark is not working, in quotes, he made the film the way he did. And if the shark was working, it would not be nearly as good. Chew on that. I'm adding exclamation point to the end of that. Chew on that. Yeah. So I think there's some truth to that. I mean, I think that we come up with solutions. That's what we do as filmmakers and as content creators. We love the fact that something is a challenge. We might complain about it in that moment, but I think that that's what drives us all to do what we do every single day. I mean, Ben, you're getting on a plane and God knows what other forms of transportation, and you're going into virtually the middle of nowhere next week. And you're a little nervous about it, but there's something about that unknown about what's going to happen that I'm sure is also very exciting to you, right? And what you're going to encounter. Right?
It is. It's probably the most exciting gig I've had for a long, long time. It's the most extreme place I've ever been sent to film anything, I guess. And yeah, but that's always the case. The unknown's exciting. Always.
Right.
Always.
I mean, the good thing is, I think, and Caleb, you can talk to this, I think that technology is advancing at a much more rapid rate, but it isn't happening like, it doesn't go from here to here. It goes from here to here to here, and then it might make bigger jumps. But we have enough time to process and figure out how that might be used within what we do for a living. And then we choose the tools that we want to do. And then some people reject, right? Some people will just say, F it, and they're like, I don't want to have anything to do with that. Part of it might be because they're at a place in their career where they don't want to learn something new, or they don't want to incorporate something else. But sometimes it's they don't want to do it because they know that the tools that they use allow them to tell the stories the way they want to tell them, and they become masters of what they're doing. I mean, it would be really interesting to think about what filmmakers who have passed, we'll take Stanley Kubrick as an example, and how would Stanley Kubrick approach filmmaking now with the tools that he has, with somebody that basically started as an editorial stills photographer and that moved into becoming essentially a director with a complete vision of a cinematographer's eye. And you know, how would somebody like Stanley Kubrick look at filmmaking nowadays? You know, would he embrace the changes that we've made, or would he hold on to film, you know, and never let go? Any feelings?
That's a really interesting topic. Yeah, because we kind of still we can look at that today. Like some directors still refuse to use anything but film. Some
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah. Others are like, let's shoot it on an iPhone. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. Or some things have become so affordable, but in Hollywood they still spend huge sums of money.
Totally.
Like our movies any cheaper today than they were back then. Actually, they're probably more expensive because of post and what we can do. And like 3D or, you know, animation and whatnot. Building all of New York in a computer so that, you know, when they do the Avengers movie, they can just fly around any street they want to. No, that's really, 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 really interesting to think about. Like I heard the other day, I can't remember the director that did, what's that random dude in the middle of nowhere builds like the perfect human robot. What is that called?
Oh yeah. And I've seen the movie.
That movie.
Yes.
I just learned the other day on a podcast that that director only uses tungsten lights. He'll even outside, he'll gel them, but for full spectrum.
Ex Machina.
Yep.
Thanks,
Yep.
Larry.
Ex Machina. Yep.
Or Machina.
Yep. That's one, Larry. Nice. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's so we take a look at somebody like Kubrick, but we also take a look at let's say a cinematographer, and you know, Pfister will only shoot on film, at least per the last group of things he did. And then we take somebody like Roger Deakins, who is a guy who's been around forever, and arguably, not arguably, is one of our greatest cinematographers of all time, and he has embraced digital, and in fact says that he is annoyed when he actually watches stuff that is on film now, because he doesn't prefer the grain. He prefers what he can do with his images when he shoots digitally. So I think that it's really interesting. It's always going to be that way. There's always going to be, as somebody said earlier on, the hipsters. And they're not always all hipsters, but there are people who want to hold on to, or they want to experience a technology that was previous to even their generation. And part of that's just, you know, from pure interest, I think. And then part of it is that it allows you to create a social grouping with other people who are interested in something that you are, that not the masses are interested in. And so, you know, that's part of the reason that vinyl had a resurgence. And that's part of the reason now, crazily enough, that people are into playing cassette tapes again, which is an awful technology. I mean, you know,
well, cassettes aren't too bad.
Well, arguably, they're frail and fragile. I'm not saying vinyl isn't, but there is a quality of sound that is unique to vinyl that I don't necessarily think that you get from a cassette tape.
The cassette tape's terrible audio.
I mean, I used to have all my mixtapes, and I used to, you know, go in there and do all of that stuff. I mean, I lived through all of those things.
Yeah.
But it does allow social interaction between people, and it allows there to be a group, and they can create a club. And I actually think that the advertisement model, and whether or not there will be a rejection to what's happening right now with advertising. And I do feel that there will be some rejection to the sort of antisocial component of what exists. And I think that that's why a lot of people who are younger are drawn to going to things like Comic-Con and these conventions, because they get to not only dress up, but they get to interact with other people. And I think as human beings, ultimately, regardless of all of this technology, what we love more than anything is to sit down with other people and share ideas. and talk about things, hopefully, that we have in common. Sometimes there are people, and we all know there's a small percentage of people that we all know that all they want to do is go against what you think. And those are the people that leave really nice comments on our vlogs and everything else online, the flamers and everything else. But that's just their nature, you know, and that's who they are as people. But the vast majority of us, we like, you know, Ben and I have talked about this, and I'm going to stop talking. You guys can talk. But the idea of pub talk, right? It's like the idea of just being able to sit down. It's not going to a bar to get drunk and to go pick up people. It's just like sitting down and having conversations about things that we're interested in. I mean, that's basically what Camera and Flask is. I mean, you know, we're just trying to have conversations about things that interest us. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think the future is a more social future than ever before. Like, not just because it's easy to connect, but because back in the day, you would go bowling with a buddy. You'd get some really crappy food, a terrible beer, and you'd bowl and talk about how each other are doing, all that good stuff. These days, you jump on Steam and you play whatever game is hot with your buddy. And because a lot of these kids that's all they've ever known is Fortnite and all these games, it's second nature to them. So they're catching up, you know, talking about relationships, what's going on, teachers, all that stuff. And I think that'll continue. It's just a different thing than going to a pub. Yeah, I think like all the dark movies where everyone's like alone in this computer bed where they go, you know, have a surrogate or whatever. I think it's a little more social and less dark than that. But
yeah. Don't you think? I mean, Ben, don't you think AI will become a component for lonely people who want to go down that road? But we crave social interaction as human beings. I love the fact that we can do this, and then once or twice a year we get together, and it's like I really appreciate the fact that we can get together and break bread and like you know just kind of have a laugh and things like that. But I love that this exists now, and this will, you know,
But I love it when it's kind of reinforcing a real connection as well, and I think. And there is that, and I think that it's great, and things like Facebook, which are fantastic for keeping in touch with people I don't see. But then there's also the other side of that, and that mental health in young people is not, particularly in the UK, is great, particularly in men, is in a really bad state, and social media is frequently blamed for that being one of the huge causes. So I don't know, I'm undecided. I think it's great, but I know myself that I can get so wound up about it. This thing that's not really real. And, you know, you're talking about the people that leaving the awful comments on your content, but then it's also about that, and that you see that everyone gets a bit brave, and it's that kind of viciousness of it that I think is isolating. So I don't know, a force maybe not for total good, to be decided or to be seen. I think with it, I'm not convinced that we're any happier as a result of technology than people our age would have been 30, 40 years ago.
I'm not convinced of that either. I definitely am not convinced. And I think that part of the problem that we have right now is that for everybody, and for younger people especially, technology is part of every part of their life now, every single moment of their life. I mean, you know, I used to go to, I mean, it sounds stupid. I don't want to sound like a, you know, guy with a cane and, you know, I'm sitting in a wheelchair, but I would go to a library, and if I wanted to find a book, it's a Dewey Decimal System. And like part of the process was actually going through those cards and finding, you know, but that was part of what I did. And I remember that as something that doesn't exist anymore. You know, you go to Google and you type something in and you find the information that you need. I think that that's good. We have Alexandria available to us if we know how to evaluate information. We can continue to learn constantly as human beings if we know how to evaluate information. If you don't know how to evaluate information, then you can't, you know, use this tool. But I'm hoping that at a certain point, technology becomes so just sort of part of what is happening that it's not, the newness rubs off, and we're not so attached to it in the way that people are right now. I'm not convince Ben that that's going to be true, but I am hopeful that because we generally want social interaction, even though Matt says he doesn't, but by his statement, he probably maybe does. I don't know. That we as people will use technology to interact with each other more successfully. I just hope that there's more of the actual physical getting together and doing things as well, which is, again, why I think people crave going to these conventions and having, you know, these common ideas together. And I don't know where that'll all go.
It's the same with us going to NAB. That's
the
only reason I spend that insane amount of money to fly out to NAB. It's not because I want to see the latest gear. I can do all that online. I go and watch all the coverage on that. It's because I like hanging out with you guys and meeting more people. And that's the whole reason I do it and spend the money on it, because it's a hugely fulfilling experience because of that.
What'll be great is when we can just beam over to each other.
Yeah, that'll happen.
Yes, now
like zap, and we're all sitting around a round table, some giant, sexy space light above us, doing this episode live. Or heck, everyone just the whole chat beams into a giant room with us. We all just chill.
We know it's not being done super successfully, but sort of, you know, circling back to the whole technology thing, we have the hydrogen camera from Red, and we're starting to see the promise for, you know, what we saw in Star Wars Episode 4 originally, in terms of holograms and things like that. And before we can actually beam to each other, there's no reason why 5 or 10 years or 15 years from now, we could be doing an episode, you know, of some sort of live stream, and the three of us are seemingly sitting in the same room together. But in a way that it feels like we're sitting in the same room. I sit in the chair here, you sit in the chair there, Caleb, you sit in your chair over there, Ben. And I look to my left and I see you and I see you, and we're having a conversation and we're looking at an audience. And we may even look at an audience because everybody else on the other end may be sitting in their chairs at home. And then it creates a composite of those people. So somebody can basically just raise their hand and we say that, hey, Larry, you know, I don't know what you're talking about that we're here in this chat because we like social interaction. What the hell are you talking about, Larry? You know, but he could actually ask us that question or make that comment live. And I think that that may be something that is realistic 30 plus years from now, you know?
Yeah. And again, probably short. I saw some amazing coverage of the Winter Olympics this year. Was that this year? Yeah, it was early this year.
It was.
They had, I mean, it was a virtual set, so it wasn't that they were seeing, but they had people in the studio in the Czech Republic and people in the studio in where was it this time? I can't remember. Wherever it was, the Winter Olympics, and the whole thing was they had a proper eye line at each other, and they were talking as if they were in the same space. And it was a virtual set, but it was pretty impressive. I'd never seen that before, so that's kind of a definite step towards what you're talking about.
Yes, and you will have to wear pants, Wannabe Films, when we watch this, and when you watch this in the future, or when you interact with it. Caleb, do you think that that is something that will be broadly implemented in the future? This idea that we are putting ourselves into shared spaces using technology? Because why couldn't a camera do that?
Potentially, yeah. The nice thing about a chat is, you know, Larry could be sitting there with nothing on right now. We don't know, you know.
Right.
And that's a nice thing about maybe the future is less, you know, right now, anonymous is the name of the game. You know, someone can go to your channel or my channel, just completely trash us. But on the street, they might, you know, be nothing but please and thank you, sir, ma'am.
But that's already happening. I would hope it would be the opposite of that.
Well, that's what I'm saying is in the future, maybe it's less like that. Maybe you actually have to be, I mean, if everything's right there and we're all in the same room together digitally, maybe that changes a little bit.
And why couldn't you be naked? I'm not that I want to be naked, but why couldn't the person be naked, but they could just skin themselves with some sort of clothing that they want to wear?
Good point.
Everybody might be naked.
Everyone's going to be naked.
Basically.
Now we're back to surrogate. This guy might be this chick, you know, this inappropriate chick might be some just giant fat naked guy.
It's like Jabba the Hutt.
Yeah.
That's what I wasn't going there, but
well, somehow we went from cameras all the way to this.
To the naked future.
We are. Yep.
To the naked. No, I think it's just talking about the technology. So this is a big subject. I don't know where we go with it in the future. I think that it's I think we all agree that there's going to be technological advances in 30 years that we can't even wrap our heads around. Yeah, we don't know what I can't even believe in the last 10 years of the smartphone, how much that one device has changed everything about all of our lives. I mean, that's really the truth. Has anything ever existed, Ben, before the smartphone? And we could argue the telephone to a certain degree, but has anything existed before this device in the last 10 years that has had a bigger impact in terms of how we interact and we do things as human beings?
No, clearly not. Clearly nothing. But it's not just, and we were talking about that way that we can be connected with it, but it's also horrible when if you're ever on public transport, if you're on a train in an airport, and there's no connection with anybody, and everybody is just eyes down the whole time. And it's, again, as I was saying before, this stuff's amazing, but I'm not entirely sure it's helping us as a kind of species.
People don't talk on airplanes anymore, by the way.
No, they never. Like, I do 50 plus flights a year, and I would say 5 flights. I try. I always make a point of making eye contact and say hello when the person sits next to me, and try and get a conversation. But it's normally just eyes down, and we're becoming. I worry that we become more and more like that, and we lose the art of conversation and that nice kind of day-to-day interaction, not big conversations with friends, just that nice little kind of meaningless interaction that we have every day. And that becomes sort of harder and harder, and we lose the skill to do that.
Yeah. And how do you pass that on? I mean, this is getting very philosophical.
Yeah,
for some reason
we need to not go down this road.
We're not going that road.
Go to bed.
But yeah. I do think that it's a good point, and I have noticed in the last couple of years that the amount of people that have conversations with each other on airplanes has gone down dramatically. It used to be the percentage was much higher, and that has a lot to do with the fact that every single person has a tablet or a smartphone that they take out almost immediately when they're on the airplane, myself included. I'm not an exception to that.
Guilty.
And you know, and so that's definitely, you know, that's definitely a thing. You know, and we're also living in a time right now, and this is also where technology converges on this, where we're trying to figure out what we can and can't do in terms of our viewpoints about the world, right? So how does that translate, Caleb? Right now, with all of these movements and everything else, it's very tricky because people also, like, I know friends who are in our business, and they are having a hard time, especially in the documentary world, with even getting people to be on camera, because everybody is afraid that what they say will have implications on, you know, what happens to them in the future. Because the social aspect of it is becoming pretty scary overall, in terms of what you can and can't say, and how comfortable you can be about saying what you believe in or what you feel about something, because it can always go back. Younger generations don't even understand the consequences of that. I've had those conversations. But that may also drive the type of content that we create as content creators, because we may have to make everything perfect and utopian in terms of what we do. You know, are we going to be able to push buttons? The way we sell things, the way we get people to react to things generally is to push a button. That's what we do. And are we going to be allowed to push buttons in the future as content creators? Do you think we are, Caleb? I mean, it even happens on YouTube all the time. Look, I mean, people's entire careers are ruined because of one comment, right?
Yeah. I hope we're able to remain free, at least here in the United States. But you never know, man. You never know. I think it's you have to be a better person these days if you want to survive. Like, it's harder and harder to be a politician who's a snake
Totally.
When, you know, back in the day, you know, what you get in front of the camera a handful of times, you make it through that and you're gold.
Yeah.
Now, you know, you fart on Skype and it's over.
Yeah. Guilty until proven innocent. Do you think that AR and VR will become a big thing and will expand? Talking about Ready Player One, Caleb. Let's get back to like on our track here.
Right.
And we look at 30 years from now. Do we feel like those technologies will be what we are trying to create as content creators for experiences? I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Ready Player One thing makes a lot of sense. I think it's just going to be kind of like you know, when social media was a new thing. I think we're going to have another thing. We got the movies, we have traditional media, we have social media, and we'll have VR. I don't think I don't think it's like choose films or VR. It's just going to be a new thing that, you know, just another form of entertainment that's going to blow up. But maybe it's the next social media. And then someday it's just going to be the three of us and everyone here in the chat on Twitter, bunch of old farts, and, you know, with our big button iPhones, and everyone else is in VR land. And we're like, well, what about the 64-bit cameras?
Are we still making films in 30 years in the traditional sense? For a broad audience, because right now films make billions of dollars worldwide. You make a Marvel movie and it doesn't matter what's going on with Fortnite and everything. Everybody goes and watches that. I mean, for the vast majority of people, that's the pop music of the film world, right? So
I think they'll be around for a good while. You know, if everyone pirated and Hollywood is like, you know what, we're going to take a break for a summer. This is too expensive. You guys are just pirating everything. Then people would stop immediately. At least, I don't know about in 30 years, but yeah.
Are we still binge watching Netflix and things like that in some form or another 30 years from now?
For sure.
Yeah, I would imagine.
I don't mean us. I mean somebody who's 20
probably
years.
Not.
Yeah.
Probably not. All my younger cousins, they just play video games. They don't watch any TV, any traditional media. They'll go to a movie every other month for fun, but they play video games.
So
together.
Let's go back to Matt Workman and cinematography database, right? He's created essentially a combination pre-viz video game environment. It's based on, you know, a platform, you know, using Steam, right? And you go in there and you basically can essentially play a video game as a cinematographer. You can pre-viz spaces and I'm sure eventually be able to build your spaces out and do what you want to do. Do you think, and we take a look at a movie like Avatar, do you think that the technology that was and still is being used in something like that, which is essentially taking a gaming engine and taking cameras that are within a gaming world, but using them for traditional movie making experiences, will be tools that are available to us 10, 15 years from now so that we can say, you know what, we want to create an immersive experience around a brand. And what we can do is we can create a 10-minute experience that somebody can jump into. And the end result is they get to pick one of 3 doors or 3 endings, you know, and then when they go through that, they have an experience. And that's using combinations of virtual reality, maybe augmented reality in terms of where their home is. There's clues around their home and stuff like that. Yeah, you know, you guys see that? 10-4 on that, Caleb. Do you think that that's something that we will see in the future? Do you think we'll have access to that so that we get excited about being able to create those experiences for our audience as well?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, what's cool about what Matt's doing is I think it'll, instead of sitting at a computer and writing code to create a 3D object and then turn it into a rendered, you know, movie, it'd be great to walk into a fake room and just start moving stuff around, you know, open up a menu and give me the Coliseum and, you know.
But we get to create
like
that. So maybe we have clients who say we have a brand and we're trying to do a campaign. and we take a gaming engine and we understand lighting, we understand composition, we understand focal lengths, we understand how to move a camera. And sometimes we don't get to do that in the real world by picking up cameras. But what we do is we dive into this engine and we build an experience to basically represent the brand for, or that product for that company. I can actually get excited about doing that. You know, that would be a pretty exciting, and I could collaborate with, you know, it'd be me and Ben and Caleb, and we would basically be a production company, and the three of us would work to build that experience for a client using the experience that we have in terms of traditional lighting and filmmaking and composition. Would that be interesting to you, Ben? Possibly?
Yeah, I guess so. It's just so hard to kind of imagine how the mechanics of any of it would work. But of course, it's all interesting.
Okay. So I think maybe just slightly, we're kind of getting to a place now after an hour and change where maybe we're actually talking about something that has any merit or some weight to it, because now we're getting it back to the idea of content creation and how that might relate to us. And I think that's what we have to look at in terms of this technology, is that we already see this promise based on gaming engines and creation and stuff like that. Maybe there's ways that these two worlds merge together with our understanding of talent and craft. Deakins was hired by Pixar to help them develop sort of what the camera technology would be that they would use digitally when they were making WALL-E, you know, and he was a consultant on that, as were other cinematographers. So I think there's some interesting convergence that can occur there. I think we think about this more in a part 2, because people like Ben need to actually sleep.
Yeah,
people
sorry, I'm
like
flagging
Caleb,
severely. Yeah.
No, and then Caleb has a family, and I'm going to go pack up an entire studio worth of equipment. And I do remember the game Mist, by the way, and it was a pretty amazing experience when it came out. So I would thank you, Caleb. I would thank you, Ben, and thank most of all our audience who comes over to Camera and Flask every week. Please recommend you know, topics for us in the future that you're interested in, because we want to make sure that this series of live streams is designed for you. And you can go to DSLR Video Shooter's website, which is dslrvideoshooter.com, benbarden.co.uk, or to thec47.com, and just send us a note and say, hey, you know, loved Camera and Flask, hated Camera and Flask, blah, 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 and smash the subscribe button and give us some topics and content suggestions, and send those to us. Okay, please do. Gentlemen, any parting words that you have?
I'm going to have weird dreams after that conversation.
Yeah, right.
It got a little dark, but you know, sometimes you got to go dark to get back to the light. That sounded way too philosophical. Gentlemen, it was a pleasure. I have finished my scotch. Hopefully you've finished your bourbon. Don't drink again for another 10 or 15 minutes. And again, thank you as always, everybody, for coming to Camera and Flask episode 6. And we'll see you guys next week when we come up with a topic. And prediction of the price of the Sony a7S III will be $27.99 US is my prediction. That's a bunch of BS, but there you go. See you guys later. Bye, guys.
Adios, guys.
Yeah. Bye.